Hello there, Commonwealth from here. We have two new stories, one for 3D and one for 2D Zelda. The first one is from Special Nick of the Xbox Era podcast, specifically his Christmas episode with Jeff Grubb. So what happened? They talked about Zelda, the next open-air game, and how Nick had gained insight from a source or a peek into what is going on behind closed doors in Kyoto. This is no doubt quite momentous if true, and a completely different cup of tea than his previous findings, as this title with the next 3D Mario are the by far most guarded internal Nintendo games. Hence, despite Nick's great track record from his carefully selected sources throughout 2025 when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2 launch, Mario Kart World with it, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond details, and Super Mario Galaxy 2, we still need to be aware that this is him talking about a title that has not yet been revealed to the public. In other words, he's really putting his solid credibility on the line. Quote, I recently received some information about the next mainline Zelda game.
Same engine with enhancements.
They describe the gameplay as tears in reality. Originally he said tears, but it is clear that was meant to be tears. In this new game, a lot of the puzzle solving stuff is cross-dimensional in nature. You move objects and do things in the other dimension. An example is that a charging bull is chasing you in one dimension, and it's a target to activate something in your dimension. Say for instance, to unlock a door. Another example he gave? Moving water liquids across the dimensions to fill containers or to make things float to the surface. There's a room with a chain and ball in it. You fill the room with water to make the ball float and pull the chain to open a pathway, all happening across dimensions. Finally, I assume the game is years away still, so somewhere between 3 to 4 years, which also makes sense, but more on that a little bit later. Since we need to solve this puzzle, and let's do it by using the following Triforce pieces, power being the first and last statement, same engine, and years away. This doesn't mean the third game with this art style, story, and link, rather that the hard work put into creating a chemistry and physics engine for Breath of the Wild, and then reused in Tears of the Kingdom, will still be used for the next open-air Zelda map. One that will very likely be new, as we saw between The Wind Waker, where its engine was reused to develop Twilight Princess, and which again had a completely different map, setting, and character. And the same was the case, though in a much modified form, for Skyward Sword. In other words, this engine comment doesn't tie to the visual art style, but rather what crazy sandbox elements or gameplay that we love and thus continue developing with this engine also helps a different thing, namely getting things into place faster and with it not overextending the development cycle due to the creation of a new engine. And this should help with getting the new game 5 to 6 years after the point of Tears of the Kingdom's release. In other words, we can still get a very different looking Switch 2 exclusive Zelda with a completely different Link, era, location, and even if it would be Hyrule again, it will not be the same Hyrule that we played in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Next is Wisdom and the color of blue, same as water, an element that was greatly downplayed in the Breath and Tears gameplay. We have really been saying this since 2017. We want 3D Zelda to bring back proper underwater gameplay, but the best we got in 2023 was Sky Island Bubbles. Luckily, moving through water liquids, in a way through dimensions with Ascent, could have been a tease of the concept of filling containers, or to just make things float to the surface, as hinted by Special Nick. And if true, it could be an indication that the Zelda team finally listened, just like they did in the case of dungeons or temples to some extent in Tears of the Kingdom. Underwater puzzles are naturally one thing. Having the playable character underwater is a whole different beast. Hence we shouldn't mix apples and oranges too much here. But there's definitely more hope now than it has been before it was chatted with the first gameplay showcased of Tears of the Kingdom in April 2023. It also helps that Echoes of Wisdom had underwater gameplay, including in its sea, and made good use of it in 2024. So the wind might be blowing where we want it, and with it, we could have major new types of territories to explore and puzzles to crack, both on the water surface and underneath it, which could be perfect with more islands. As we have previously stated, our dream next open-air Zelda should have a map that combines big land territories and seas with islands that go hand in hand, though that might go against our Triforce of Courage, namely green, As in Tears of the Kingdom, we did see a tease of this cross-dimension possibility with the Ascent sections, where Link entered a state traveling through material. Naturally, it was a spectacle, but one without controllable gameplay elements. Well, Tears in reality might do something with that, taking this generation's trending cross-world gameplay, including most recently in Sonic Racing, to a whole new level. And let's be honest, there's definitely potential here, as Astral Chain, but much more so Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, have shown the way of how exciting jumping into and combining interdimensional gameplay can be. This was really a showcase for the PlayStation 5, and if Zelda was to take advantage of the same technology as indicated, then we're talking about another gameplay revolution, starting a task in one dimension and then completing it in another, taking the mechanical groundwork of Tears to create actual tears, or more precisely, rifts. Another step from the rifts of Echoes of Wisdom. And unlike what was the case with Ultra Hand, where the most creative builds often had very little to do with the main quest or scenarios that most players would face, this type of gameplay could be more mandatory sections. The more you think of it, one of the targets with challenging conventions is to take established and somewhat overdone gaming formulas, mostly Ubisoft, and improving them with a new, better Zelda gameplay vision. With Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, we saw a new take on the open world, allowing for climbing and gliding as a core mechanic pretty much everywhere. And then allowing us to explore in 3 different layers, the Zelda team might be playing with making the gameplay even more interactive and most of all seamless across dimensions. Combining the best of the open-air Zelda multi-layer and old-school Zelda light world/dark world or present/future formula. Best of both worlds, and a proper direct connection between these that is as seamless as we have seen on the PlayStation 5. The chemistry and physics engine was created for just this, to be expanded upon, and lost more than a single console generation. Hence, it is certain that we are yet to see its peak potential. That is right. Ultra Hand, Auto Build, Fuse and Ascent can absolutely be topped, and Tearing the World, or building upon the concept of rifts in Echoes of Wisdom, is just that. And let's not forget that all of those mechanics were crafted for releases in 2023 and 2024, so an already outdated Nintendo Switch. In comparison, the Switch 2 is a beast, both undocked and especially docked, so you can only imagine the possibilities of the smashing adventure and gameplay that Donkey Kong Bonanza provided. A game that is just as universally praised as Ocarina of Time was in 1998. How funny would it then be that the heavily rumored Ocarina of Time remake could push the Zelda team to create something that is equally well balanced and paced? Thus far, however, we have only seen series producer Eiji Aonuma avoiding taking inspirations from titles such as Elden Ring, which makes sense as that one has still not launched on the Switch 2, which stands in contrast to the recently launched Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. What from here could serve as templates for the next Zelda? Better storytelling and combat with combos? By all means. Funny enough, Special Nick seems to have received leaked information about the number of new Zelda amiibo being prepared by Nintendo. Could they tie to whatever is being revealed? Absolutely, as one option is naturally the heavily rumored Ocarina of Time remake. We had the Zelda 30th anniversary Ocarina amiibo, but Nick has been pointing to multiple new ones. So perhaps it could be one with the Hero of Time on Epona, as we saw with the Equestrian Breath amiibo, or Child Link pulling the Master Sword. It could also be an anniversary amiibo similar to how we got the pixelated 30th anniversary Link amiibo in 2016. Now then, with open air and 3D Zelda well covered, let's move over to the recent development of a 2D Zelda, possibly making its way to the Nintendo Switch 2 in 2026. Since me and Mike Odyssey had an exchange on Twitter/X regarding a new Zelda trademark, specifically for Triforce Heroes. A game that I will be brutally honest and say that I don't want to be the main Zelda 40th anniversary release. A new trademark for a potential remake/remaster, to which I pointed out that this is just renewal of trademarks 10 years after release. Mike replied that the Triforce Heroes registration is brand new, while the original is still active. At the same time, Joe Merrick of Cerebi might have provided a conclusive answer. Quote, "These games are both 10 years old, and trademarks typically get renewed around the 10-year mark by Nintendo. We go through this every single time one happens. This is not indicative of anything." End quote. So which camp are you in? Mike's or mine/Joe's? Hopefully, we will not wait too long for the truth, as Nashweedle has already in the first week of January been hinting towards a Nintendo Direct in the coming weeks. If you haven't already, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell. Last but not least, a big thanks to you for watching, and to all our patreon.com/commonrealm patrons. Special shoutouts go to our raw producer, Jonathan, and heroes, Cheryl, Garrett Hoy, Holly Wolf, and Kintaro. You rock, and please enjoy these awesome videos.